Hello, this is As the World Burns. I'm your host, Randall Burns. It is May 6th, 2021. Today's topic is the future of the global transportation ecosystem. It is based on some conversations I had with an old friend who did quite a bit of government work and still follows transportation trends. And I'm basically asking the question, what are we going to be seeing coming from what seem to be some disruptive changes in transportation technology that seem to be emerging and some related technologies. Okay. Now, a lot of this is centered in the public mind around a set of companies owned by Elon Musk. There's actually a lot more happening than just that, but that is some of the stuff that gets a lot of press for various reasons. But and it's not just transportation directly. Okay. One of the other things that is coming out of the Elon Musk organization is Starlink, which is going to be the first truly global broadband communications network. And that's going to interconnect the world in a way beyond what a lot of people are conceiving right now. Literally within 18 months, Starlink will probably be the world's fastest internet provider, not just the fastest satellite provider, fastest provider, period. And it's going to change a lot of things pretty dramatically. There are going to be countries that right now are not really connected. Right now, only about half of the world's population are connected to the internet. And that's going to be cut again in half within probably another 4 or 5 years and proceed from there. And we'll still have some tribes that do not have any outside contact, but we're also going to see a global communications ecosystem emerging pretty rapidly. And one of the things that's going to create is a demand for improved transportation. Because once people can realize that there are people that want to buy their products, they're going to want a way to get their products to market. And that's coming. Okay, that's coming regardless. Okay, now in the transportation area, I would say that there are 5 major technologies that are coming. Okay, Elon Musk is a physicist by training, and he has kind of been a lightning rod for a lot of the major technical talent. There's this kind of image that people have that he's doing all this stuff, which is obviously not true. Bill Gates used to complain about the same thing, that no, he wasn't the one writing all the code for Windows, contrary to popular belief. And Elon is not doing all of these things, but he has become the front man for a lot of them. Now, those include electric vehicles, the tunneling revolution, autonomy in vehicle autonomy, suborbital travel, and hyperloop or ultra fast rail. And with electric vehicles, what is not being quite appreciated is just how much we're looking at a reduction of overall cost per mile and transportation costs, and what that's going to mean for a lot of areas that are pretty car intensive right now. It also is going to affect local pollution dramatically. I mean, we have a lot of areas that have been considered undesirable to live because of the degree of automotive pollution, or people responded that way. Okay, whether they were doing so consciously or not, and that is both pollution in terms of noise and air pollution, and both of them largely go away with the EV revolution. Cheaper tunnels. Now, the Boring Company is a small part of that. They are doing a small bore tunneling machine that works in fairly soft soil. That's what their niche is at the moment. And that works very well, for example, to create a de facto subway for Las Vegas. It's not going to occupy every niche. They're going to have all the niche. I suspect they're going to have literally all the customers they can handle the next 5 years for what they have. And by the time they get that caught up, then they're going to be ready for, probably my guess is their first niche will be a small bore hard rock machine. And they will have other niches like doing through sand that they'll get around to doing when it makes sense for them. And so then they'll have the ability to create a real tunnel network rapidly. And I think, and they're kind of shooting to be the rapid player from what I gather. They're the ones that have been making the most noise around that. Now, there's also a revolution happening for larger bore tunnels and that are a more specialized item. Now, one of the things that those are important for is creation of tunnels that eliminate the major global bottlenecks. That includes things like the Bering Strait, the Istanbul, the Gibraltar crossing, the Singapore Strait, the strait connecting Jakarta with Singapore. Okay, these are major projects. Okay, connecting Taiwan and China, connecting Japan and Korea. And I think these all may happen within by 2060. There's a really good chance that these could all happen by then. And that changes the world in a significant way. Suddenly, land-based transportation becomes more practical. And when you combine that with high-speed rail and ultra-high-speed rail, or ultra-high-speed fixed transport, like hyperloop, which is not really rail, but it's a fixed, very high-speed fixed transport, then the world starts to change a bit. Okay. Now, we also are developing suborbital travel, which means when you really want to get it there this afternoon from Beijing to New York, it happens. And this is something also coming fairly soon. Autonomy. Now, Elon Musk has been slipping schedules on this quite a bit. There are on Metaculus some harder schedules using a more sound methodology. But even there, things have been slipping up. In other words, this is happening a little faster than even the experienced predictors like myself have been anticipating. I went in yesterday literally and adjusted several of my forecasts by a year or so. But it looks like, before 2030, we are likely to have full-blown autonomy on US streets. That's just, that's not Musk making a sales promise. That's what the forecasters are saying now. And it may happen, Musk is saying it's going to happen a bit faster than that. He's not discussing things in terms of things like SAE certification, which is how the Metaculus questions are phrased. So we're going to have to, but then the thing is, like, what does that mean? Well, one thing it means right away is the roads are going to rapidly become a lot safer for bicycles. And the thing is that, we forget that cars are not the only electric vehicles that are on the roads. We've also had the e-bike revolution. And that's been held back because the roads are dangerous. Even though bikes, by a lot of metrics, are a more practical form of transportation for a lot of people. They're cheaper. People can get exercise while they ride as opposed to sitting and getting more obese. There's some real practicality advantages for a lot of trips that are now made by car. And that's been held back for automotive safety reasons. That may not be the case in the not so distant future. That may change. The robo-taxi network will reduce the need for people to own vehicles. I won't say it'll eliminate it, but you'll still have a lot of privately owned vehicles, but it's going to reduce it. Reduced insurance costs. The insurance costs for a lot of drivers are prohibitive, and it actually limits the independent living for a block of the population. People that may not have the best eyesight, they may be getting older, and that's going to change. It's going to increase the range of practical commuting at the same time that transportation is eliminating the need for commuting. So that's going to change development patterns. Now, what does this mean economically? I think it's going to mean more dispersal of population over time. The big win for the reduced driving costs are going to be outlying areas. Now, how this relates to transport of goods, I'm going to leave to people up the food chain, but it's something that's going to have to be looked at, and looked at very carefully. There are a lot of major unknown questions at this point. How soon is all of this really happening? Okay, we don't know. How many miles for the major infrastructure improvements? And we don't know. And how many miles of each gauge? We don't know. But these are questions, for the prediction markets and for the forecasting sites like Metaculus, and they need to be gotten up sooner rather than later. They are important questions on which major infrastructure decisions need to be made. There is also a political aspect to this one. Okay, the major urban areas are going to need major infrastructural improvements to keep up, to maintain their existing position. Okay, there's a question of maintaining existing infrastructure versus new development, and that's a more complicated issue. I think it is going to be a lessening of density advantages in large part. The combination of the communications improvements and the general trend of the transportation improvements. One of the things that Tesla has done is they've made public transit something practical for a much smaller city than is the case. I mean, the Las Vegas loop is an interesting case study. And it's basically showing a nice subway system in a city much smaller than you would normally expect that to be happening in. I don't think they're going to be the last one. I think we're going to see others. The lowering of pollution and congestion cost is going to have major economic impact. And I think that needs to be forecast in a variety of directions, including like the real estate investment markets. There's going to be an issue with affecting both countries and existing corporations. Companies that do not make the right moves in this environment may not exist in a few years. It's that dramatic. The same thing has to go with countries. We're going to be seeing countries that are going to be making serious and fast progress that not for a long time. I'm not sure which ones they are. I think Panama and Costa Rica are examples of countries I think that may have a really big win here. They're on a bottleneck. They are in a position to benefit from the elimination of that bottleneck. We'll see. But this is a real question, okay, that I think needs to be addressed. There are companies like the major U.S. automotive companies that I think their existence is threatened. And it's a question of whether they're going to be around in a few years. The automotive companies other than Tesla in the U.S. And then we also have companies that are in position to ride the coattails of Tesla. I put Arcimoto and Aptera in that category. Aptera actually has some technical advantages over Tesla. They're a much more efficient vehicle, and they're not constrained by looking like a car. They can't, they can't really. It's hard, a little bit hard to sell them to a traditional car purchaser, but they're going to find their niche, and we'll see where it goes from there. But just what this means, to the U.S. economy, I think is a very profound question. My guess is that we have some really big winners and we have quite a few losers, and it's going to be it may well create a demand for Andrew Yang's basic income. It may increase the demand for that, and I think that's something that needs to be looked at quite seriously as part of the ecosystem. And I think that we're looking at more movement of people, less constrained by traditional economic ties. And we need to ask ourselves, what does that really mean for us, both socially and politically as a nation, and as a neighbor within the world? Okay. So this is Randall Burns discussing the future of the transportation ecosystem. Thank you for joining me. Feel free to comment. Suggestions for future episodes are especially welcome. And thank you again for joining me. Subscribing to the channel helps. Liking this video helps. I really appreciate your support. Thank you very much.